Good afternoon and welcome to lockdown, ABM in lockdown marketers debate. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm conscious that we are competing against a plethora of Zoom calls and Google Hangouts and Teams meetings. So thank you for making time in everybody's busy day. I'm feeling very confident that it's going to be worth your while. My name's Untitled. I'm a director at Digital Radish, and what I'm excited about today is there's a lot of noise around ABM, about what's happening, what are people thinking, marketing, etc. And I thought what would be great today is to really hear from the people who are actually doing the doing, who are really out there seeing how their programs are developing, who are prepared to give their feedback in terms of their experiences and what's really happening right now and what we can all kind of take from that, learn from that, and then be inspired by it. I'm also conscious we've got a huge amount of people on the line, which is great. So please do feel free to raise questions, comments, and we want it to be as much of a debate as possible, really. So please do feel free to do that. What we've done is we've been doing some surveys in the market around particular topics that marketeers are interested in, as well as speaking to thought leaders online today, and I've grouped the session around six key points. So it's going to be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I'm feeling confident that we are going to be able to get through it all. So before I hand over to the speakers to introduce themselves, I thought it would be really interesting to get a little bit of a benchmark from our audience in terms of what they're experiencing with their ABM programs. So I'm just going to launch a poll. So here we go. So how have your ABM programs been affected so far? So have you been, and it may be that, you know, multiple options are applying, different programs in different regions, different territories, different products, etc. Please select as many as that apply. So pausing, things have had to go on pause. Postponing, you're planning to start and haven't. Or pivoting, so you are looking at new options, you're reconsidering your account selection, reconsidering your messaging, that kind of pivoting piece around realigning with what the market needs now, really. Powering ahead, so basically fundamentally unchanged. Your strategy was strong before, it's strong now, you're treading an even path. Or prioritizing, so doing more with less. So it'd be really interesting to get a sense from the market in terms of where you're at, in terms of pausing, postponing, pivoting, powering ahead, or prioritizing. So quite an interesting mix there. Pivoting and pausing, kind of neck and neck, that's interesting, as well as powering ahead. So I think that will be interesting to consider in light of what our speakers are experiencing from their end, because I think they're a mixture of the kind of powering ahead and pivoting, as well as also prioritizing kind of approach. So without further ado, I would like to just hand over to our speakers now to just give a little bit about them and their organisation and the kind of ABM they've been doing. So Danny, if you want to kick off.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Danny Nail. I work for SAP for the last 16 years. SAP is an end-to-end application software company and one of the top cloud companies. Wow, there's a lot of noise there. We have almost 50 years. We've been in business for 50 years almost. Have 200 million users and 100,000 employees. So we've a lot to do during what's going on right now. I've been with SAP for 16 years, and over the past 4 years, I've developed and launched and run the global ABM program. That's more of a one-to-few type program. And then now I'm currently focused in North America and Latin America, where we do one-to-one, but we're also scaling the one-to-one. So a lot of changes with the current environment.
That's great. Thank you, Danny. Amy.
Sure. Thanks, Laura. So I'm Amy Hall. I work at Hitachi Vantara. I'm based out of the London office. I've been with Hitachi Vantara for just over a year now. I work in global account-based marketing, so there's a number of accounts that I support on a kind of one-to-one type approach, and also ABM like one-to-few. I'm also looking to roll this out now to the GAs and field marketing. So just going through that exercise. I know we obviously acknowledge that it's not business as usual, but we are not slowing down, but just kind of looking at how we're redefining engaging with our customers.
That's brilliant. And Renaye?
Renaye Edwards from Digital Radish. So from our side of things, we're obviously an account-based marketing agency, and we're working with a number of clients at the moment who are mainly pivoting or powering ahead, to be honest with you. And again, we've got a lot of programs which are kind of flipping from a kind of a one-to-few to one-to-many to try and kind of broaden that reach. But also we do have a number of one-to-one programs where actually you know, we had opportunity pre-COVID, and we've still got opportunity there, and although it's quite challenging in terms of obviously making sure we've got that insight from the accounts, which is changing pretty much on a daily basis, just making sure we've got obviously more dynamic ways of being able to pull that information in on the accounts in real time. Yeah, we're still pushing ahead with some of those, and actually, you know, for some of our programs which are targeting, you know, CTOs, what better time they're kind of at their desks, and they're more so than what they ever were before. So we're actually seeing an uplift in engagements, which is great.
Excellent. And Ross?
Hi everyone, yeah, Ross O'Neill from Cloudera. Been at Cloudera for just over 4 years. We're an open source software company. We offer a data management platform for enterprise businesses, really to drive insights that should inform decision making. Been working there for just over 4 years, as I mentioned, but the last 2, I would say, been focused on ABM, predominantly within EMEA, but we are part of a global program for account-based marketing. We've been focusing very heavily on one-to-one, but we do have some one-to-few activities running as well. But yeah, looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you. And last but not least, Riaz.
Hi everybody, so I'm Riaz Kanani. I am the founder of Radiate B2B. We are an account-based advertising platform, so all our clients are doing account-based marketing to some degree, ranging from one-to-one right the way through to scaled one-to-many campaigns around the globe. Really, it's been interesting to see how those different geographies have been affected actually in when it comes to ABM programs, and hopefully we'll talk a bit about that as we go through.
Wonderful. So our first discussion topic is around business strategy and proposition. So we've seen organisations changing their whole proposition and reframing what they believe to be important. And before we go into a deep dive around marketing practicalities, we thought it'd be great to talk a little bit about what lockdown has meant at a broader level, and interesting to hear how organisations have kind of adapted or reframed what they stand for in light of COVID-19. So Danny, I understand you've got some thoughts to share on this.
Sure. So, you know, at SAP, we've always had, or for the longest time, we've had a really tight focus on our customer. But as soon as this pandemic happened or started, we basically doubled down on that. So we've doubled down on our working with our customers as well as our employees. So immediately the focus shifted from a selling motion to a partnering motion and a collaboration motion, where our sellers are working with our customers to help connect customer to customer. For example, we had one customer who he called a sales rep and said, "I need 500 hospital beds," and within 30 minutes, that seller had connected him to a hospital bed, a person or a company that had just received hospital beds. So they connected, they got them shipped out. It was pretty amazing to have that happen in 30 minutes. So we've stopped the selling motion and we've become more collaborative. But we've also, SAP has also doubled down on its focus on the health and well-being of our employees. So, you know, not only do you want to keep your customers happy, but you got to keep your employees happy and safe and that kind of thing. So they've really gone out of their way to communicate that to us and to make sure that we're all staying well and safe. But the other part of that is, now when we come to the table with our customers, we're coming as partners and collaborators, and no longer is it a selling motion. I mean, that will come eventually again, but for right now, we got to just make sure our customers are okay.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed completely.
I can add something there just from what we've been seeing. I mean, I absolutely reiterate the partnership side and that collaboration. We've actually done that ourselves as a business in terms of that collaboration. It's been very mixed across our clients. So some clients have been very heavy to focus on existing customers and pretty much drawn up the drawbridge for new customers. But equally, some clients have just because they are, they're very well suited to the current environment and the current situation, they're able to go out, and the challenge for them has been one of, well, look, we're trying to help, and this is what we can do. But getting that messaging right has always been a challenge in the current environment, so that they're not, looking like they're just trying to take advantage of the situation.
I think that's a really good point, and I think that kind of treading the line really about what's appropriate, what's sensitive, where are we actually kind of adding value in a genuine way, as opposing to kind of appear opportunistic. I think that brings me on to something that has been mentioned a lot, which is that messaging and content piece. How much do you risk overloading, but equally you don't appear like you're living on the moon and you're kind of not engaging with something that everyone cares about.
We're finding like we don't want to, we don't want obviously to appear tone deaf. We don't want to appear as overly promotional. So we're kind of doing looking at how we go to market with that messaging, and we're doing a kind of good combination of kind of societal led messaging and solution led messaging. And this is something I've been looking to do for the last year or so. I attended in an ABM conference back in October time, and they were saying like, really, how about putting together a matrix around, your shared values that you have with your customer. It could be around, your social, your ethical, your corporate causes, and go to market with that sort of messaging. And it's been on my list to do, but COVID-19 has given me that opportunity to do that. Obviously, at the same time, I still have very hungry salespeople that are like, hey, I've still got my quota to hit. So I need to know what you're doing around this solution, this solution, this solution. So we're in a very fortunate position at Vantara that actually we can say, our industry-leading infrastructure solutions is helping that your customers do X, Y, Z to fight against COVID-19. But we are just very fortunate we can do that.
I think that's wonderful. And you used the phrase when we spoke, Amy, about powering good things. And I think it's wonderful that probably in a post-COVID world, it would have been a lot harder to get energy focused just around that through the kind of hoops of approval. But actually, that business shift now is that feels like the priority, and it's kind of a very positive place to be, isn't it? The businesses have regrouped around how do we do good things, whatever.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change now. Now we're doing that. We're not going to move away from that. Yeah,
that's a really good point, actually. And I understand, Danny, you've kind of had a similar experience.
Sure. We acknowledge what's happening in our messaging, but we definitely don't lead with it. I mean, how many emails a day do you get to start out with the word COVID-19? I mean, it's just like, it's just crazy. But I think that what we're trying to do on top of that is look for ways to partner and help, not just with our customers, but with other businesses. So like we just announced a partnership with Amex, American Express, and a stand for small, because small businesses are really being affected by what's happening in some cases a lot more than the large businesses. So we wanted to make sure that the small businesses are taken care of as well. So through that partnership with American Express and other companies, we're doing that. But I think Amy said it. You can't be tone deaf. You've got to pay attention, but you also have to bring some sense of normalcy to things. So the focusing particularly specifically on the pandemic is, except for those companies where it works for that, like Riaz mentioned, but focusing on that's just not the way to go, I don't think.
I thought it might be interesting at this point to kind of open the question out to the group and see what level of engagement they're doing with COVID-19 issues. So let me just launch this. I think it'll be interesting to know. Let me launch it. So yeah, so what levels of engagement has your ABM program had with COVID-19 issues? Has it been high? You know, is your website, you know, realigned around it? Your messaging, is it been a real key priority? Or actually you at the other end of the spectrum where you've decided, you know what, the best thing I can do for my market now is be business as usual. Let's continue what we're doing, providing the value that we provide in the way that we do and not engage. Or low unintentionally. So what we mean by this is, have you not engaged with COVID-19 issues, not because it's a strategic decision, but actually it's been difficult to get some consensus internally, it's been difficult to get sign off, it's been difficult to get resource. So we just thought that would be really interesting to pose to the group. So quite middle ground then, 67% saying medium, low intentionally, and that's great. No one's been kind of in a situation where they've not engaged, not because they've chosen to, but because it's been kind of forced upon them. That's interesting. Thank you. Perfect. So before we move on, is there any more thoughts that, Renaye, I know you had some thoughts around this kind of walking the COVID line around content and lockdown.
Get myself off mute, first of all. Yeah, I think that there is a fine line, right? And I think, you know, Tony's point, I don't think we can be tone deaf. I think there's a big issue here around, I think, you know, I talked about insight earlier, and I think we'll talk about it kind of going forward, but I think it's now more important than ever that, you know, we are sort of the voice of the customer, and making sure that, you know, we're doing our social listening, and we, you know, we are almost producing, I think, you know, what we're doing at the moment is trying to produce kind of more dynamic fact packs. So where we're doing kind of more one-to-one based programs, obviously really difficult to, you know, once you've done them, they're usually kind of a bit of a static document, if you like. But what we've tried to do is we're trying to make these a little bit more dynamic, so that actually, you know, let's face it, you know, our company's priorities, strategies and challenges are literally changing on a daily basis. So making sure that we are aligned to those, and making sure we're putting out the right messages, particularly if you're, you know, you're running a, you know, a 7-touch program, for example. I think, you know, it's making sure that you're completely in tune with that, and you've completely got your listening ears, you know, that they're fully on, and you're using what's available. And I think around you, in terms of, I think a lot of it's quite a manual effort, and I think that's also down to not only obviously things like social listening and obviously just desktop research, but also working more closely than ever with our sales teams as well, because right there on the front line, and you know, they're hearing it as much as what, you know, as what we can kind of grab around us. So I think that's really important to maintain that level of communication, and making sure that you've got processes in place also to work more dynamically as well. I know that, you know, certainly for some of our customers, more kind of global technology companies, whereby you know, there's so many processes in place where they're trying to get through central, for example, creative messaging and things like that. I think there has to be a point where we look and say, actually, we can't have a sign-up process of 4 weeks at the moment. We just can't, because if we're gonna need to be saying anything that's really, really relevant right now, then it's gonna have to be quicker than that.
Definitely. So in terms of that point of kind of being fluid and flexible and adapting quickly, something that's come out a lot has been this point around pivoting, and I know that was something that a lot of marketeers are doing, as we saw at the poll at the beginning of the session. So it'd be great now, I think, to talk a little bit about pivoting and scalability, and what has lockdown meant for ABM program in terms of the strategy and account selection. So you know, we're seeing clients focusing on new opportunities or growth sectors, or in fact doubling down on current customers, changing their ABM strategy, i.e. moving from one-to-one to one-to-many, scaling, or actually doing the reverse and doubling down on where they think the real opportunity is, which is around one-to-one. So it would be great to talk a little bit about how people are seeing those changes. And I think particularly one element that's sort of come up again and again, both in our conversations and more broadly, is this theme of scalability. So why is scalability such a pressing issue right now, and where do we feel scalability is going to be done well to kind of to work the best way in the kind of context of what we're experiencing at the moment? And Ross, when we spoke, you had a lovely example of how your team responded to lockdown really, really quickly and looked at how you're going to introduce scalability. So it'd be lovely to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I think someone made the point earlier about speed, and I think it was Renaye was saying that we need to react very fast at the moment. I think that's true. I think one of the things we looked at very quickly to support the sales team is to just ramp up some of the digital marketing initiatives we had running as part of our ABM program. We were doing quite a lot of online advertising, LinkedIn advertising for specific accounts. But we quickly scaled that out to a much broader set of accounts. So we were still looking at messaging, but probably more aligned to a one-to-few approach than what we had been doing on a more one-to-one basis. And that was something we accelerated. I think within 2 weeks we had programs up and running for top accounts across Europe, which was really strong for the sales team at that point, because I think very conscious that the sales kind of go-to method is go and meet the customer, which isn't an option right now. And obviously they've got the virtual meetings, but we just wanted to make sure that we had a presence with those customers, and it was still account specific, but just probably not as detailed on a one-to-one issue that it had been previously.
Yeah, I echo that. I mean, we've seen a lot of our clients shift their target accounts. Obviously some were lucky, but a lot of us, suddenly the accounts that we were focusing on are no longer maybe the primary and now possibly second or third priority. And so large amounts of message change and large amounts of account change. And we've seen clients go both ways. So we've seen clients expand, like you were talking about, Ross. We've actually seen quite a few actually bring out really small clusters that they're targeting with very specific messaging, which they just hadn't done before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I mean, we were still targeting very specifically by area, and within LinkedIn we've been using the member skills as a way to segment audiences. So the messages were still very specific to specific groups within these accounts. But yeah, we just scaled it out very quickly. We've been trialing it really with some of our sort of very high priority accounts across Europe, seen some success, but those programs were pretty early stage. We kind of intended to run them for kind of 4 to 6 weeks, see if we got some successes and then broaden it out, but we just ramped that up pretty aggressively as a direct impact from working from home, which at Cloudera we did. I think it was the 10th or 11th of March we all started, so lockdown feels a bit longer for me right now.
I think that's a really interesting point around that market testing piece, and kind of almost thinking it through, but being quite quick to see, okay, how's testing and seeing how the markets are going to respond, rather than relying overly on lots of internal processes to kind of do that decision making for you. It feels like those processes have kind of been shortened. And I know Amy, you spoke about scalability and how you've been testing to almost prove success before you even begin.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm quite grateful that the verticals that we focus on, they haven't changed. They haven't been impacted by COVID-19. So we're still going after those same companies on one-to-one and one-to-few. Yeah, I mean, which we said at the very beginning of the call, we are trying to scale and include more accounts on our ABM programs now. And obviously, we speak to the sales directors and find out from them, which accounts they think that we should include, and we could go through kind of the serious decisions account selection process. We use our first party data, and we use our third party data. We use Bombora, but we're still, that should be a good enough picture, but we still kind of go through like a POC where we'll kind of run a LinkedIn campaign or run some display ad campaigns and just see if there's that appetite that we think should be there before we go straight in and start doing these kind of insight reports and messaging guides. And as kind of Renaye touched on earlier on, you know, I think this time last year, or maybe the year before, well, definitely the last year actually, we were creating those really kind of, you know, resource intensive pieces, such as those insight reports and really kind of, you know, long account specific ebooks. And the problem is, you know, every company we work with is going through a big digital transformation. So what's current for them 1 month, you know, whatever their strategic priorities are 1 month, you know, they could change kind of 6 months down the line. So, you know, I think, you know, Renaye, you touched on earlier, right, it needs to be more dynamic. You know, it has to be a way that we can just quickly update things kind of on the fly, and we haven't been able to do that with our current processes. So that's what we're kind of looking to change going forward.
That's great. I think it's that kind of that fluidity, I guess, that, you know, I think previously there was a kind of, you know, you're doing one-to-one, and you're doing one-to-few, and you're doing one-to-many, and actually where we've seen a lot of success is kind of breaking down the barriers between them and going almost who deserves to be in each, and how do we get the one-to-few supporting the one-to-one, and the one-to-many supporting the one-to-few.
Absolutely. Kind of, absolutely. I mean, it's sometimes the time it takes to create an org chart for a particular department in an account, we get that back and we're like, oh, they've all left in the last month. Oh,
yeah. Back to the drawing board.
Yeah, we're having to flip people in and out of our program at the moment. You know, as people are kind of getting furloughed and what have you, and so it's definitely a moving feast the whole time. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's finding out those ways of being able to be more streamlined and having literally someone solely with their ear to the ground, what's going on within those accounts, particularly on one-to-one, obviously being more critical than ever.
Yeah, that sort of really quick insight as well is where sales comes in quite a lot. I mean, we've seen in our clients' marketing going to sales a lot more to get insight almost on a daily or bi-daily basis.
Yeah, I should think the database companies of this world are really struggling at the moment. I wouldn't like to be doing what they're doing, because you know, it probably had to update their systems every week to be current.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, sales definitely feel like they're a bit more kind of proactive. That's for sure. It feels like actually they are, you know, actually more kind of aligned than ever, because, you know, they are, you know, having to kind of feed back information, you know, with what we're picking up, with what they're picking up, when usually it's just a case of, yeah, we've got the insight document, we hand over, they take it. You know, it now feels like it's this, you know, as I said, it's quite fluid, and it's every other updating stuff. It feels actually like working more as a team, you know, and I actually thought that actually sales and marketing alignment, we're going into a different topic now, but that felt like actually maybe that would almost break away even more so now that we've got remote working, but actually I've seen that actually do the opposite.
Yeah, and I wonder if something as well, you know, it was great to see that actually not a huge amount of the audience were prioritizing and having to do more with less, but potentially that's going to be more and more of a common theme. And when that is the case, you know, one-to-one is an expensive thing to do. It's a very valuable thing to do, but it is expensive. And I wonder whether there's going to be more pressure in terms of how those one-to-one accounts are selected, making sure that you can be confident that they are going to be the right ones to focus your energies on. And I think, you know, we'll probably see a lot more you know, energy put into, you know, sales may say to you, this is the one-to-one list that I want, but then the marketeer that then has to go away and layer the insight on and go, actually, is that where we want to be, you know, prioritizing the resources that weren't perhaps as plentiful as they were before the lockdown. Danny, I know that you've had experience in terms of kind of doubling down on your one-to-one and looking at how you can kind of see the best opportunity from them.
Yeah, so what we did was, you know, of course, we're not doing live events right now, so there's a lot of marketers who might have been focused on a live event that have a little more free time. So in the one-to-one world, we've kind of gone to an ABM-like model, where we had each market unit nominate 40 or 50 accounts. We took those accounts and bounced them against our internal system, which uses Bombora and some other things, to look at what's in their sales bag, what kind of intent are they showing, where are they focused from just a data standpoint, but then we also talk to the seller and get their viewpoint, because even though that's showing where they're focused from a data standpoint, the seller is the one who's on the front line and knows what's going on. So we take that information, and in some instances, like you've mentioned, we've doubled down on specific accounts because either there's a deal coming or they're just that important. But on the other hand, a lot of accounts are important right now, right? So we want to show as much love as we can. So we've compiled a list of some of the tactics that are easier to launch and more quick to launch that we can do with each of these accounts. We may, as a marketer, may work with a seller and launch only one tactic as opposed to a whole program around that account. So it's been very interesting to determine what are the easy things to do or the quick things to launch, and make them also quick for a marketer to get in the hands of sales, and as well as make sure that the seller can actually use those things. We can make them successful with their customers. So it's been interesting. It's going to be a while before we get to our 300 accounts, but we are quickly getting them. So it's going to be interesting to watch how it all plays out.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Danny. So I'm conscious of time. So moving on to another topic that has come up a lot, and it's always come up. It's that kind of old turkey of sales and marketing alignment. So where are we now when salespeople can't get close to their customers and we as marketeers can't get close to them? You know, so the traditional way that salespeople have always operated, that whites of the eyes, the handshake, you know, what are we going to do instead? Where are we going to see innovation around that? How has it changed? How's lockdown been both a kind of challenge, but also I think, you know, we're hearing a lot about how it's been an opportunity, and it's enabled us to get close to people in different ways. So Amy, I know that you had some thoughts around actually you're seeing engagement increase. It'd be lovely to hear kind of what your experience has been of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, speaking with my ABM SDR, you know, last couple of weeks, she's just been able to get people on the phone. People just have more time to just pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone. I think it's just because we're all more kind of focused on the present. You know, we're not thinking about a meeting in, you know, maybe 4 weeks time, or booking a restaurant or whatever it is, like this is it, we're all in this together type thing. You know, it's just making that human connection. She was just saying that she spoke to someone a couple of days ago, and you know, she heard a child in the background and she was like, oh, how's homeschooling going? And the woman was like, oh, it's an absolute nightmare, isn't it? And you know, it's just building that empathy. So you know, she's definitely having better conversations. She's definitely having more engagement from customers that she's never been able to get on the phone before. I think it's also kind of the messaging that gets included in kind of the, you know, the SDR kind of touch point sequences. I think we're all kind of guilty of being tempted to lead with, you know, technology or solution first, and we're just really trying to look at that. I mean, I think, you know, I always kind of catch myself, you know, if I am going to lead with solution first and think, oh God, no, back to the customer, back to, you know, what their kind of, you know, what their challenges are and what their business goals are, and then at the bottom we might have something around, you know, how we can possibly help. I just think we've just changed that kind of formula even more, so it's 90% on what their experience as a customer, as an account, as a persona, and then 10% around what we do, and then just making that call to action just a little bit softer. So previously we might have said, like, click on this link to schedule some time with me. It's now more just, you know, I hope this is of interest, you know, you want any more information, you know where I am type thing. And she's getting people to engage much better doing it that way than we thought, that having a link, it'll be easier just to schedule some time. And does that really happen? Not very often. So yeah, it's just and you know, it's to say we're just all in this together, aren't we? And people are just more willing to want to chat to someone. I don't know if that's because a lot of people maybe are on their own and just not interacting with people as much as they were before, or say it's just that we've all got more time for each other because we're not rushing from Liverpool Street Station to, you know, Euston, you know, we just, it's nice. And I think I've experienced that, you know, externally with my customers, but also internally with my global account directors. They've definitely got more time to be much more aligned than they were before. So win-win for everyone, really, in a, you know, for what we're doing in ABM.
Yeah, we've
That's
seen the email replies and phone conversations happen much more than before in the current period.
That's great, kind of new way of engaging. The old B2B thing about human to human is kind of actually finally happening.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Ross, I know that you've been doing some interesting things around sales enablement, as well as kind of working with, prioritizing how you work with sales, should we say?
Yeah, I think well, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of things haven't changed too much. A lot of our sales team work from home. You know, they're in the office when they're in London for meetings, but a lot of our systems back-end stuff is built for kind of home working. So in some respects, a lot hasn't changed. I think they're definitely the way we interact, and obviously having much more video calls, which I'm sure everyone has probably had a huge increase. I think some of the companies who sell those platforms have done pretty well out of the current lockdown. You know, there's a lot of that, but you know, we use things like Slack. You know, people are exchanging texts, WhatsApps regularly in the normal period. So a lot of that, I guess, is the same. Maybe it's increased slightly. I think in terms of kind of enablement and alignment with sales, a lot hasn't changed either. You know, we've got the same accounts in our program that we had pre-lockdown. I think we're just trying to think about how we can scale out what's working for our one-to-one campaigns to more accounts with the sort of the same resources, and obviously that's a big challenge. But you know, one thing I think we're very keen on is where possible, you know, collaboration with sales is probably the biggest factor when it comes to alignment. You know, you need to have account reps, and we're pretty fortunate at Cloudera. We've got a lot of account reps that see value in marketing and see value out of ABM. But if you don't have that, I think you've got to be pretty quick to react. And you know, we have had experiences, you know, pre-lockdown, to be honest, probably more so, where we've had to take accounts out of the program because we haven't had that buy-in. So I think it's something to be, you know, very mindful of, and something that we continue to advocate with sales. And we're upfront from the beginning. You know, if we see that the engagement isn't there, we will look to substitute an account for another account.
So I guess that's a good motivator, isn't it, to kind of get the sales teams to kind of.
So you're doing the POC on the account and the POC with the GAD as well. So yeah, I think that I like that idea.
Yeah, I think so. We've always been really close to the sales teams that we're working with. You know, it's I guess it's an impact of being more one-to-one focused. We have eight accounts that are our primary one-to-one accounts across EMEA, and we have pretty regular kind of engagements, meetings with those account reps, and we're pretty close to the day-to-day kind of impact. We have Slack channels where we, you know, constantly, you know, a lot of them are kind of tech support stuff that I don't even understand half the time, but we're very aware of what's happening in the account already. So I think a lot of that has remained the same. I think the thing I miss most with the alignment stuff is actually, you know, when you are in the office. I think Lorna, we spoke about this yesterday. There's that kind of when you just bump into someone at the coffee machine or past their desk, and you can get a lot of insight in that kind of 2-minute exchange that you now have to set up a call or a meeting to get, which makes that kind of I guess reactive kind of insight from sales about what's happening in the account a bit more challenging. But other than that, I think most things are pretty much the same.
That's great. I've just had a question pop up actually for yourself, Ross, or for Amy. I work for a company where at the moment ABM equates to deal-based marketing. In the current climate, do you have any advice for how marketers can seek buy-in to pilot strategic one-to-one with existing clients instead?
Yeah, I mean, most of our one-to-one programs are with existing customers. We don't tend to get too heavy on deal-based. I know I've been to conferences where there are dedicated deal-based programs, and it's not something that we've done specifically. We will work with the teams around key milestones such as big renewals or expansion opportunities, but the nature of our sales cycle with those top customers doesn't tend to be kind of RFP type engagements, where deal-based campaigns are probably a little bit more effective in my experience. But yeah, that would be my kind of answer to that question. Not sure if it completely answers it. We've
done it on a couple of occasions. One occasion that springs to mind is yeah, they were going through an RFQ, and this particular account, they had an executive sponsor within Hitachi Vantara. And that exec recorded a video. It was the CEO actually recorded a video for members of the buying centre, and then that was sent to them around our partnership and where we are today and where we're hoping to take the partnership to. And that worked out really well. I think that came across really well. But that's kind of the only examples of when we've really helped with bid support, really, and deal support.
And that prioritization on existing clients, I guess, over net new, it can be easy to think, do you know what, net new presents the biggest opportunity. That sounds more exciting than doubling down on our existing clients. Do you feel that that's shifted at all, or do you think priorities have kind of stayed the same?
And for me, when we're actually trying to change it, actually, but at the moment, I would say 80% of our ABM accounts are install base, they're existing customers. Previously, I've done it, and it's all been acquisition, and I think it's always good to have a good mix between the two. Yeah, I mean, obviously there is always that kind of, it's the acquisition account, then might be more exciting, we might get more traction, we might, but yeah, I think the thing obviously with acquisition accounts is just how well so I keep saying GAD, global account directors, sorry, it's just our terminology, just depends on, we've all got our own terminology, it just depends how well the sales director knows the account. I've had examples of acquisition accounts where they haven't had any sort of relationships with the buying committee, and it's starting from ground zero. So it depends on the relationship, I think, that the account director already has with that account.
That's great, thank you. And I think that's great. And then moving on then to, at a bit of a more tactical level, a point around sharpening the mind, which I shamelessly stole from you, Ross, redefining the channel mix. So obviously events are, for the near term, off the table, face-to-face, direct mail is more well. So I guess the question to the group is around what are we seeing in terms of forced digital transformation? Are we really going to be always on 3 podcasts a day? What innovative ideas are happening in digital, and can DM really exist in lockdown? So I think first over to you, Ross, because I've stole the sharpening your mind point completely from you in terms of reevaluating really what good looks like in terms of your marketing tactics.
Yeah, I think Danny raised the point earlier about physical events. We all know that they're not possible right now, and I think for the foreseeable future, can't see that happening. I think when we were talking about it yesterday, Lorna, we've been, I guess, shifting our focus to more digital marketing tactics for some time. There's still a place for physical events, absolutely, and they're an important part of the program. Right now you can't do them, so it does sharpen the mind on that kind of digital activities and what can we do differently. So yeah, absolutely, I think we've probably ramped up typical things that we're all doing anyway, right? So it's not necessarily that we found some new tactic that didn't exist pre-lockdown, but I think we're certainly looking to do more virtual events, more webinars, more advertising through channels like LinkedIn, where we can be very specific with the target audience. I think supporting sales with sales enablement messaging and copy for outreach, social posts, social selling, is something that we're ramping up as well. So I think really looking at what's available from if you look at like the suite of digital marketing tactics that are there, obviously drawing on what we've done already that's been successful. I think the biggest challenge for us now, and interesting that no one said it on the first question, is prioritizing which digital marketing tactics and trying to align those across EMEA is actually one of the biggest challenges that we're facing now, because, you know, to Danny's point, there's no physical event, so you've got a field marketing team across Europe that were all running programs which were multi-channel. Now everyone's forced to digital, and actually a lot of it is English. So you've got kind of different regions running very similar activities, and there's a lot of where you can kind of join up together and try and streamline some of those tactics, and execution is where we're at the moment. So I think prioritization is actually a big focus for us right now in terms of aligning the team internally and prioritizing which assets to work with sales to push up their queue. You know, because they can't promote everything all at once. So I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah, just picking up on your local language thing, we've seen so our European clients localize to each of the countries for the advertising targeted at companies, and as they've expanded the numbers of companies they've targeted to try and basically identify which companies are actually, you know, in market or willing to have conversations. That's really been one of the few ways that they've been able to do that without spending an awful lot of money building very customized landing pages that you then have to deliver via email. And
yeah, we've had there's a couple of countries across Europe I'm not going to name because I don't want to give too much away, but you know, we've had feedback before that they don't really typically engage with webinars much because the way that they do business is very personal. It's over lunch, it's over dinner that they do the conversations. But in this situation where it's not possible, they've been forced to do webinars and actually seen some really good results in local languages, of course. But I think that's a really interesting insight that, you know, I don't know if it will revert back. I think that's something to look at, but certainly the kind of online digital webinars won't work with certain countries is something that I think we can confidently challenge now. If it's a direct result of the context, we'll have to wait and see, I think.
That's great.
I think part of what we're seeing is the structure. The structure of the online events is changing too, where, you know, in some instances where we were going to have Sapphire as is that me making that noise? But where we were going to have Sapphire as some big event, now it's spread out, right? So it's more bite-sized pieces. It's different, and so are even some of the events that we're doing online now where we were going to go. But we're also looking at ways to make our sellers feel more in touch with their customers, and by that I mean the use of Riaz, you mentioned the personalized landing experiences, embedding videos from the sellers in those directly to the customer to make them feel more in touch or more personal. So anything that you can do that's more personal like that would help.
Yeah, we've been doing the same here. I mean, I think some of our customers, obviously, and Amy, you mentioned about, you know, I think people are they're a lot more receptive, right? And I think this is our chance to kind of actually experiment with different ways right now. You know, we've got to try and be different and act different with the times, and we've been doing personalized videos from the sales teams for our kind of one-to-one programs. The sales teams have been recording themselves at home, you know, we've been top and telling it, trying to make it as, you know, as professional as possible, but actually the authenticity and the realness that kind of comes through, and just being that, yeah, this is not done in a production studio, but it's, you know, it's all very timely, it's really relevant because we're acting really quickly, and we're doing something, you know, a little bit different to try and kind of cut through the noise rather than, you know, your bog standard white paper or, you know, whatever it might be. So I think there's no reason why, you know, I think this is actually a good time for us to kind of sit back and ask ourselves, you know, actually this is about kind of getting creative and experimenting right now. Yeah, we're already seeing kind of quite good results from that. So
Is it worth, Renaye, touching on the kind of role of influencers? Because we were seeing influencers as a channel kind of increasing before before the lockdown, and it feels like that's going to become even kind of stronger, maybe inspired by the B2C world. That kind of influencer marketing feels like it's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I think obviously this is, I guess, more you know, a one-to-many program, but I think from our side of things, obviously a big part was, you know, we talked about right early on in ABM when kind of COVID kind of kicked off, was around kind of this element of, you know, trust is now more important than ever, and rather than, I guess, using kind of media partners to kind of distribute some of your content, we've been doing a lot with our clients around kind of creating reports and pieces using influencers within the market, and then using their network in which to kind of distribute the content as well. So again, just making it feel like it's, you know, it's a bit more collaborative, it's the content is more authentic, and as well as that, you're being able to kind of reach you know, tapping into different audiences that you may not get if using kind of, you know, if you're doing just content syndication, for example, the leads are a lot more warmer that you get through influencer marketing, is what we're finding at the moment.
I guess that taps into your point, Ross, around how do you help the salespeople become more of a thought leader and more of an influencer within their own network? How can you kind of power them to be able to have that thought leadership as I guess as a sales role shift, and that it's not necessarily appropriate to be selling? How do they operate differently? And I guess your point around giving them the tools and the equipment to become thought leaders and influencers is a really important one, as well as, you know, when we don't want to be seen to be selling, working with people who are already respected in the industry to create valuable content and have something to say that, you know, provides value is really important. And there's also that question around direct mail. So that's always, you know, it's often been a bit line within ABM programs, and what that means now when we're all at home and you can't deliver a direct mail to an office. And I know, Amy, you've had a little bit of experience with kind of dealing with that conundrum.
Yeah, absolutely. So we sent out some direct mails. It must have been about 2 or 3 weeks before lockdown. So by the time they actually got to the offices, people were already working from home, so that was pretty unfortunate. So what have we been doing? And actually, it's been a good exercise for us, actually, because we reached out to those people that did receive the direct mail, and we've just said, when you get back to the office, you'll have a nice gift waiting for you. And actually, it's been quite a good teaser, because they say, what is it? Can you tell me what it? Can you send me a screenshot of what it, which they would never have done before? So that's been quite interesting. Another thing that we've been doing is we've been sending out kind of customer kind of care packages. So, you know, just like sweets and cookies and biscuits and coffee. And I think it depends on the types of accounts that you're working with. Like, some are willing to give their kind of their home addresses, some aren't, some just for compliance reasons just won't accept gifts at all. So kind of we're working through that at the moment. We're having much more success in the Americas than we're having in EMEA, maybe an obvious thing to say. But what I would say is, when we kind of go back to normal, whatever normal is now, we will probably continue with our direct mails. I think we'll just be looking at kind of how we can do it in a smarter way. It is quite a costly exercise, and we're all trying to look at how we can kind of make our budgets kind of stretch further, but pre-COVID-19 and obviously now during COVID-19. I just doesn't really seem to matter what is in that direct mail. Previously we've gone to so much effort of really thinking what goes in there, and how does that how is that going to be perceived? Does that go with that piece that's in there? And I actually get to a point where I think if I just sent them a chocolate, piece of, a chocolate bar, would it have the same? They have the same reaction. I think they probably would. Someone's gone to the effort of sending them something, and they've got something that's arrived in the office that's for them. It's personalised for them. And we've had some really good success with direct mails in the past, and people like you know, CTOs and CIOs and CITOs, like, who would never ever have, you know, been able to engage with these people before. They just, you know, the ABM SDR sent him an email saying, you know, I hope you got our gift, and I was thinking about calling you. Is that yes, yeah, please feel free. Picked up the phone and had a really good conversation, and then we got him on a plane, and we had a conversation with our exec team with him, you know, all from doing a direct mail. So I think it's a really, really valuable exercise, and it's not something that we are going to kind of, you know, remove from our ABM marketing plans.
That's great. And I thought now it would be really interesting, actually, while we're talking about, you know, actually we're seeing in some areas increased engagement, you know, people are receptive. There's this, potentially everyone just doesn't want to have to talk to their toddler anymore, and they want to talk to someone over the age of 5, which might be why. But it would be great to understand actually from the audience in terms of the results that you're seeing and the engagement. Let me launch this. So in terms of results, have you seen a shift in engagement from your prospects' accounts during lockdown? Increased, decreased, or stayed the same? Great, okay. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of would not have expected that, you know, when we first did this, we did a webinar kind of right at the beginning and kind of around the 20th of March time, and it you know, it didn't you know, it didn't seem like that was the likely outcome. Actually, you know, there's more of a role for ABM, more of a place for having those value add conversations than ever. You know, I think that's a really positive thing, isn't it, for those relationships and for kind of ABM as a whole.
Yeah, just
Wonderful.
the lack of human connection, isn't it? It's just making us be much more open to having conversations with people.
I agree. And so I'm conscious we've got 4 minutes left. I'm just going to check that I've not. Oh, very quickly. Have you a question from the group? Have you had any pressure on your budgets, and how has that impacted your ABM campaigns? Does anybody want to talk to that point? I understand completely if they don't.
I think for us, I don't know if I would call it pressure. It's just shifts, right? Everything is shifting around, and we're trying to determine where the best place to spend our money is. So it's not really pressure. It's just right now all in flux and shifting.
Yeah, it's very much the same with us. We have actually switched off all our PPC and shifted it to other channels, which I was not expecting to do at all. And we've seen a dramatic shift in the locations of people interacting with our website from our campaign. So America has been, it's always been second or third for us, sort of behind UK and Europe, but actually in the last 4 weeks, the USA has gone to the top by quite a margin. So we're seeing quite a big shift in demographics at the moment.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I would say there's not been additional pressure. I think there's always pressure on showing ROI from budget. That hasn't changed. We haven't seen any impact directly on our budgets yet. You know, but you know, we still got to see what the economic impact of the, you know, COVID-19 is. I think that's still, there's a lot to play out there, but so far not been any budget pressure from my side at least.
That's great. And before we finish up, we thought it'd be nice just to end on and it feels like there's actually been a lot of positives all the way through, but if anybody wants to kind of share some of their experiences in terms of, obviously this has been a, you know, an incredibly difficult time for many people, but there's also been kind of positive things to come out of it. And if anybody would like to share kind of any of their thinking around particular things that they thought, do you know what, this has actually been a real positive to kind of take away from this experience and learn from and kind of move forward with.
I can start.
I'll jump in and say that I just think people are more human now. I think that everybody's breathing and, you know, they just stopped and they recognize that we're all humans and we're all in this together. And so it's made conversations a lot different, and it's been nice.
Yeah,
It feels like Sorry.
I was going to say around that, just linked to that is everything's a little bit more informal, a little bit more, to use that marketing phrase, authentic.
Right.
But actually really authentic rather than marketing authentic.
This feels, I think for me, like the business kind of game faces are kind of, they're just off a bit more, and yeah, I think we're thinking about, obviously that was nice to hear actually, Amy, you're doing kind of around the care packages and things like that. We're not just thinking now as marketeers, we're not talking directly to business challenges, we're actually almost, the clever people are also talking to, our home challenges as well, right? And respecting those and acknowledging those, and just by doing that, it just feels in some way that you're managing to get a little bit closer to your customers, a little bit closer to the clients that I'm working with and their sales teams. And yeah, well, I think that's certainly a positive, and I hope that part at the very least continues.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always liked to, there's always been a line sort of between home and work, sort of thing. But as over the years, has gone by, there's sort of a grey between the two, right? We bring work home, we'll do it on a computer at home, we'll take phone calls and all the rest of it. But it was always work mode or home mode, and that feels like that's gone. I can work at night and I can actually feel like I'm at home, and it's not quite so, I don't know if I'm using the right words, but if you get what I mean.
I completely get what you mean. I think, Renaye was saying earlier on, she was worried that her 4-year-old was going to come in during the webinar, onto the video. Well, it doesn't matter anymore. Is he in the room? It doesn't matter. I think that's really changed, unless you're a BBC news reporter. But it doesn't matter. That we've blurred those lines so much. We work from home, we all have lives, we're all human. I think that's a really, really good outcome of this.
I really hope it stays. I really do.
Yeah. Well, on that point, that we're all human and we all need to get on with having a nice evening. So I thank our speakers for sharing their time and insight, and to everybody who's joined today. Yeah, and thank you very much. It's been a really interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye. Bye.